Hey everyone, today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to create a React Native app from scratch, and it's going to be a complete app at the end. So I haven't looked into any of the APIs we'll be using, so I'm just going to be starting from scratch as if I'm researching how to create this. So this will kind of be the process I normally go through when I'm creating an app from scratch. So this app won't require a database or backend or anything. We're just going to be using public APIs. And for this particular app, we're going to be using the Hacker News API to display a list of articles, their ranking, and then if you click on an article, we're going to show it in a web view. So we can get started. So before you start, make sure you have Expo installed. It's a React Native kind of manager, and you could install the Expo CLI. I'll put a link in the show notes for that. So to get started, we can go to your workspace. I'm just going to do it on my desktop for now, and then run Expo init, and then we'll say Hacker News. And we could do the blank TypeScript and the managed version of that. So this is going to create a new project for us and initialize the main app component, and then also I believe adds another subcomponent. So while that's running, let's go ahead and research Hacker News API. Let's see if we could find a good one. So feel free to do this with any API you want, and we can you could follow just the same basic steps. But for this one, I'm going to use the Hacker News API. So let's see what we get here. So it looks like if you go to this route with an ID, you can get one item. I wonder if you can get all the items. I guess not. Let's see how you can get all of them. So I guess a search. Okay, so search by date. So front page, this would probably be a good one. Okay, so this gives us all the articles that are on the front page of Hacker News. So you could do a Command A, Command C, and then copy and paste all this, and we can go to JSON editor online.org. And then you could paste this JSON here, and then you could copy it over to the right. And this will give you a nice view of what the data looks like. So we'll see it's an object with a array hits, and this is a list of all the articles. So we'll get the title, the URL, the author, number of points, the data is created, and tags. That seems like a good start for our app. So we can copy this URL again, and let's see where our Expo init is. Okay, so it looks like that's complete. So we can run code if you have VS Code installed. So I'll run code Hacker News to open Hacker News, the project we just created in VS Code. So you can close that terminal, and we'll open the integrated terminal in VS Code, make it a little bit easier. Let's see what we have here. We have our main app, and it looks like that's all it installed here for us. So what we're going to need to do, we can create a little list. So I'll create a new empty thing. So we could add routing. So we'll have the main app, and the main app will have just be basically a parent of all the pages we have. And then we'll add the pages. And for pages, let's say we add a home screen, which is a list of articles. And then an article page, which is a specific article. So when you click on an article on the list, it'll go to the specific article page. And we add the pages. Let's do add service. The service will just be a basic TypeScript class, and it will return the data from the API endpoint. And that should be the basic steps that we have to follow. So we can start by creating the service since we have the API URL saved in our clipboard. So we can create a new folder. We can call it services. And in here, let's create a Hacker News .ts file. And here we can do export class Hacker News service. And let's do a static public get articles. It'll say get front page articles. That's the API endpoint. So by default, it'll be public. So we could remove that and just do static async because it's going to return a promise. And then here we're going to need, we could use the fetch. So you could use something like Axios to do HTTP requests, but in this case, we could just use the built-in fetch API here. So that we could call fetch and then enter our URL here. And this is going to get all the data from this URL and return it. So then we could do a promise.then. So when the promise is resolved, we'll get the response. So by default, fetch returns a value of type response, which then you could call a function on JSON, which will parse the JSON in the response. If it's text, you could also replace this JSON with text in order to give you the text back. And that's all we need for this. So in our component, we could then, once we're done with creating the actual pages, we can call this function. It's going to return a promise that will resolve to the JSON from this API endpoint. And I guess if you think about it, we don't really need all of this other metadata. It might be nice to have eventually, but if we want, we could also clean this up and just only send back the hits. So one other thing we should probably do is we can create a model for the data. So if you want, you can copy one of the items here. Let's see if we can grab just the one item. So we search for created, that's the first key. We can just look at this. So we put this screen over here and then the screen over here. And we'll create an interface, so export interface, and we'll say article, and we'll say created at, it's a string, and then we'll have title, URL, string, author, string points, be a number. What else do we want? So the story title, I don't think we really need any of this. So the number of comments might be nice to judge its popularity. For now, we can just omit that and leave that off. Maybe we'll bring in created at. It might be good to have. So it looks like created at I guess we have the other created at, so we don't need that one. So that's just the date and probably seconds there. But we could just use the formatted date here. So that's probably all we need. We could add all the keys and then just choose the ones that we want to display, but to keep it simple, let's just add these for now. So we could update this service we have here, the service method. So this can return a promise of type article, an array of articles. And then here we could say the response to JSON, and we could do another then after and say this is going to give us an object with hits, which is an array of articles, and then we'll return response.hits. And we just have to make sure we return this. So that should all be pretty clear. So we're just making a request to this API endpoint to get all the articles on the front page. And then when we get that response back, we're first going to parse the JSON and return that. So the promise would then, instead of resolving to this, the promise is then going to resolve to this. And then we're going to add one other chain onto that .then and format it one more time. So after we format the JSON, we're going to get the response here, which is going to be of type object with a key hits, which is going to have an array of articles. And then we're just going to map that and return the hits instead, which is an array of articles. So this way we don't return all the metadata. It'll simplify our UI components a little bit. So if you want, you could actually copy this model into a models folder. So we can copy article, and in the models folder, create a new file, article.ts, and then paste that there. And then in the Hacker News service, we can just hit backspace on the E and then type it in again, and then it should autocomplete, and you can hit enter, and it should auto import the article model. So we have that all set, and now we can start adding the routing and then the pages. So to get started with the routing, I do have an article on Medium for this. We can usually follow, which is has all the commands we have to run to install everything. So let's see, we could find that article. let's see, that's probably back here. React Native, create your first React Native app. So I'll put the link to this in the description as well if you want to follow this. So we can go down and then run npm install React Native navigation. This will install the React navigation for native apps. So that's the first command, then you can copy the second line for Expo install all these other packages we need. And then while that's running, we can go ahead and look in this article a little bit further down, and let's find where we add the routing in. So it looks like in the app we use navigation container, and then this has a root stack navigator, and then for each screen you add this root stack screen with the name of the screen, the component you want to display for that route, and you can add any additional options if you want to. So first we have to create this root stack. So we'll do that, and then we could import the create stack navigator with the auto importer, which doesn't seem to be working. So we can copy these imports because we'll need the navigation container after. And then let's copy this internal part here. Replace this. And then we could get rid of the styles for now because we don't need that anymore. Looks like we have an extra return. And then this was for a to-do app, so we could remove that extra one for now. And we'll have a home screen, and then we're going to have the article screen. So we could create one more of these, and we'll call it article screen. And the header, we can keep that off for now. Header shown, we could get rid of that too. So we got additional options after. So keep it simple. I'll post this all this code to GitHub if you want to view it there as a reference as well. And I'll also post the Medium article to make it a little bit easier. All right, so now we have our navigation set up with the home screen and then the article screen. But you can see we have two errors here because the home screen doesn't exist, nor does the article screen. So let's go ahead and create a pages folder. And then in the pages folder, let's create a home.tsx. And then one more in the pages folder called article.tsx. And let's actually just call this home screen to differentiate it between anything else any other components we create. And then we could start on the home screen, and we have to always import React. And then we could do export default, use a arrow function, and we're going to just default return a function that will return a JSX element. So to get started here, we can just do a basic view and then text and just say like hello world. And then if you want, you can copy this and just put it in the article screen. So this way you have a template to start with when we get there. Okay, so we could run this. If you're on Mac, you could use the iOS simulator, or if you're on a Mac or Windows, you could use the Android one. And if you don't want to bother with either of those, you could just do the web. So you do npm run web, and this will open in your browser, which will make it a little bit easier. You will notice that when you're running in your browser, you won't see some of the native styles, or some native components won't work. So I think when we get to the web view, that might not work in the web, so we can switch over to iOS at that point. So once this boots up, we should see, okay, home screen not defined, so we got our first error. So we can go back here and then make sure we import home screen. And then for now, just so we don't get the error, we could actually just import this because we created the file. So we can import article screen as well. And you should see home and then hello world with our text element. All right, so we have that. And now what we want to do in the home screen is actually load the articles. So we could use the service. So we can use an effect with no dependencies. And then in this effect, we can say Hacker News service. and then get front page articles. And then when we get that response, we can import the article model. So when we get that response, we can save it to a state object, and then we can display it down here. So we could say .pen, and then we could do .catch for errors. We could just log it for now, we could handle it after. And then let's add one other thing up here. Say const and equals use state. And this will be for our article list. So we'd say article list, set article list. And then we can set the type of this, because it's generic, to type article array. We could default this to an empty array. So then when we load the article list here, we can call set article list and pass in the article list we get back from the API. So I know it's a little confusing, these article list here and here. So maybe we'll change this to API article list. Make it a little clearer. And then down here, we could say we have loaded article list.length articles. And we have loaded 20 articles. So you can see we're successfully loading the articles from the API already. So we can clean this up a little bit. And then down here in the view, we could actually replace this, and let's do a flat list. So this is a React Native component. And I believe it's data, and it's a property on flat list, and you can pass in the article list. And then you can also call render item, which takes a function and it will return or give you an item as a parameter, and will return in JSX element here. So we could say view, actually let's make this a touchable opacity. So this way we could use that on press. So when we click on it, we'll actually go to the article page. And then in here, we could add a text element, and we could say item.title. This is of type list render item info. And then with a type article. So I think it's going to be item.item and then .title. So item was probably a bad choice here. Let's say item info and then item info. Just change the variable to make it clearer. So when we save this, it should auto reload and display a list of all the articles. So now we're loading from the API and displaying a list of the articles here. And on this touchable opacity, we can add some styles to make it look a little better. So we can create a constant down here called styles, and then we'll import style sheet. And that import comes from React Native. I'll say .create, create a new style sheet, and we'll say list item. And then we'll attach that to this touchable opacity here. So styles.listItem. And then let's add some padding to the top. So we would say padding vertical to add, let's say 10 to the top and bottom, and then padding horizontal to add, let's say 20 to the left and right. Let me say a little bit better, and then we could do a separator. So you have to return a component for this, or feed this a component. So we could just create a basic JSX element that looks like a separator. So const separator. And then we could just say text, and we can give it a style. Border bottom, let's just say gray for now, then border bottom width, give it 1, and then we'll pass this separator into the item separator component for the flat list. So it'll give it a little separation there. And then let's also increase the padding vertical. Let's say it's 20. If you want, you could play around this and make it look a little bit better, maybe 25. Looks pretty good. And then padding horizontal, I think that's good. Maybe we can make it 25 as well. All right, and then when we click on an item, we want to go to the article page. So to do that, we can put an on press event on the touchable opacity. So you say on press, and then use an arrow function in there, and then we can create a external function here, handle item press, and we'll pass in the item or the article here. So on press, we're gonna call handle item press, and then we'll pass in item info.item. And if you want, you can break this into new line, make it easier to see, especially because we're on split screen. And then we're gonna need to update our function parameters, our home screen component parameters, to pass in props. And for now, we can just give it a type any, and we'll say props.navigation.navigate to article, and then pass in the article here. So any top level component that you use in the app navigator will automatically receive a prop with navigation. And you can call navigate on it and pass in the name of that component. So you can see here we gave it a name article. So we can navigate to article, and then the next parameter here is just any extra parameters you want to pass to that route. So we'll pass the actual article. So now if we click on one of these, looks like it's not doing anything. So let's see. Okay, so the touchable opacity, make sure you import the flat list and touchable opacity from React Native and not the native gesture handler. I seem to do that a lot. So now if you click on it, it should go to article. And something cool we could do is when we go here, instead of, we could replace this article title with the title of the article. So to do that, you can't really do that in the article screen. There might be a way to do it, but I usually find it's easier just to do it in the app. So for the article options, you can actually return a function here, or pass it in a function instead of an object, and then this function will return an object. So this can take a route parameter. So we could break this out, get the route, and then we'll say header title, route.params.article.title. And you'll see this is throwing an error because saying doesn't exist on type object. So we can pass that as type any, and then add question marks to avoid any null or undefined objects. So if you click on an article here, you should see the title up in the header. Okay, so I think we're pretty much almost done with just a basic version here. While we're at it, we could replace the header title here for the home screen and just call it Hacker News front page, or just call Hacker News, make it clean. And let's see if there's a style, header title align, say center. And while we're at it, on the home screen, right now we're just displaying the title. We can also display the author if we want below, so they'll show the who wrote the article. And we could add styles to these. So in the styles, we could say title, we could say header, and subheader. And then we'll add those onto these text elements here. And then once we add those both on, we could then change the font size. So we can make the header a little bit bigger. Let's say 15, and then font weight, we could say 500. So step up. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Let's try 18. That's a little bit better. And then for the subheader, maybe we could say margin top 5. Might need a little bit more. Maybe we'll give it 10. And that should be good for now. So then if you click on one, it'll take you here with the title. And then just hello world for now. So in the article screen, we're going to also receive props, and the props are going to have the article that we pass in when we call on the home screen navigate. So we can get this article on the article screen. So that will be article type article. We could probably do this in effect. So use effect. And this will be in props dot, I believe it was route.params dot article. And we could protect this with the optional question mark, and then make sure to import article. And then for now, let's just log the article. And let's see what goes on there. So you can see we get the article down here in the console. So we're getting the article that's passed in from the home screen. And now we could also use the state. So get the article, set article, and then equal to use state of type article or null. Give us a default of null, and then when we get the article down here, we can call set article. And then down here in the view, for now, just to make sure everything's working, we could do a JSON.stringify an article or empty object if that doesn't exist. So if you click on it, you should see the full article details here. And then something we're going to want to install is a WebView. So that'll be React WebView. So I think you could do npm install React Native WebView. I can put this in the show notes as well. So you go open another terminal and do npm i -- save React Native WebView. And this is going to be the part where it probably won't run in the web anymore, so we might have to use a simulator. So let's copy this WebView example, and we could replace this so far, and we're just going to use the WebView component. So make sure you import WebView, and then our URI will be article.url. And we should probably add some protection here. So we could say, give it a view as a parent, and then we'll say if article, then show this. Otherwise, show a activity indicator. So it'll show a little loader if it's loading the article or if there's an error or something. And we could always change that to display an error in that case. So this probably won't work because it doesn't work in the web. So let's boot this up. So you could open your simulator. If you don't have this installed, I could put the instructions in the description for setting up Xcode and also making sure your simulator is working. So you want to boot this up first. We can close the web version for now. And let's stop this with Control-C. And instead of npm run web, we'll do npm run iOS. And this should boot up. So while it's booting, let's take a look at our to-do list here. So we have the service done, so that's good. Added pages and added routing, and then let's do show in WebView. Alright, so we're booted up here in our iOS simulator. So if you click on an article, let's see what we get here. So it looks like missing keys for items. So in article screen to the view. It might just be because it's too small, we might have to give it a full height and width. So as a test, let's just say height 500, width 500, and let that reload. Sometimes if it's not reloading, you can click on the terminal here. We're running npm run iOS and hit R, and that will refresh. And then sometimes you might have to restart the app. So you can go to home screen and click on Expo. And then you'll see the recently opened app here, and it'll reload the JavaScript bundle. So it looks like we're getting an error, so missing keys for items. Make sure to specify ID or property. So it's probably on the home screen. So is there a key? So this will be, I wonder if we get an item here. Maybe we could add a key here. Let's see. Item info. And give it the index. See, we still get the error. So it looks better. So I think we just needed a key on our list items in the flat list. All right, and in our article screen, let's remove this view for now, and we can actually use a loading property on WebView. So let's keep that there, and then say article URL. And function that returns a loading indicator. So give a function and say activity indicator. We can break these onto new lines here. And this should always be defined, so I guess we could remove the null and then put this here and then get rid of that, and then we won't need a set article. So we can remove some of the complexity from it. So it looks like our app is loading already. So we click on an article, it should load that page for you. And let's remove the style, just give it the default. That looks a lot better. So if you load down, you should be able to click on any of these articles and it will load up that page. So that's pretty much it for our tutorial here. So what we did is we created a basic app in React Native, and this is currently iOS version of it. You could also run it in Android without having to do any additional coding. And we added a service to load all those articles from a Hacker News API. And then we created pages with routing in the app.ts file to route to those multiple pages. And then we used the flat list to display all the items from the API. And then if you click on an item, we redirect to the article page and display that article in a web view. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you like this video, please like it and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos on React Native. Thank you.